Look at that mess. That's what we're talking about. What I'm going to talk about today is attractors. Things that get critters' attention, get them close to your trap. Something I'm still learning about after all these years. This is D.W. Verts, Hickbilly Outdoors. We're talking about getting some Furbearers into your steel. Be right back. It's like 4 degrees outside and wind blowing. This big front has come through most of the country here right before Christmas. And for the first Christmas in years, and only about the third one since I've been a trapper, which has been 40, whatever, almost 50 years, I'm not, no trap set. It's sad. So I'll get to it pretty soon, hopefully. I'm going to talk a little bit about some important stuff. Things don't have to be complicated. That's the biggest issue with so many things you do in life, and trapping can be made in a way more complicated than what it needs to be. So we're going to talk about attractors, some things I use, when I use them, why I use them, how I use them, and try to get this done in a fairly short and succinct fashion. First off, the animals that you're going to attract the most, using some bones and feathers and such, number one, for most people, it's going to be a bobcat. I assume probably a lynx the same way. Cats are really attracted to visual things. Around these parts, like central Missouri, of course, besides raccoons, especially big boy raccoon, are really attracted to visual stuff. They like something that pops, something you see, and you're going to catch some of your biggest raccoons of the season in those predator sets that have feathers and bones and such. Gray fox are huge around here. Gray fox, what few we actually have right here, really like a feather or bone. Red fox is a substantial step down, but I've caught them with feathers. I definitely catch them with a bone. We're talking about the T-bones and cow bones and whatever. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And then a far distant fourth or fifth are coyotes. Now, coyotes they're their own critter for sure. I have caught plenty of coyotes using bones, but it's not normally part of my set. If it's a flat set with a bone laying on the ground, that's one thing maybe. But I don't use anything for backing at my coyote set. Some people tend to use bones and berms, whatever. It's just my personal thing. I don't use a lot of backing. I think if you make a set correctly, that the animals will step into that pan without any backing. It's playing the wind, etc. It's very complicated, but very easy. I just take the easy route. I remember watching J-Lord videos back 20 years ago. He's trapping, I think, East Tennessee, which is just one state, but a long ways from here, because Tennessee's a really wide state. And he used a heck out of them T-bones, hammering them all the way into the ground, so just the bones sticking up. I've caught coyotes doing that. It seems to be better for me in the big woods coyotes, which we got 4 or 5 different kinds of coyotes in this area. And in the big timber, the T-bone seems to work better. I see a lot. Remember, a lot of his videos he used was in big timber, logging situations, stuff like that. If I never use another bone in a coyote set, it'll be all right. It's not a big deal for me. Bobcats, gray fox, raccoons are the big 3. Red fox to a slightly lesser, quite a bit lesser, and coyotes, forget it. I just don't worry about attractors. I worry about set location, scents, etc. for coyotes. Man, y'all, it's cold. I took gloves off this. My pinkies are already cold on both hands. So that picture I showed to start was the feathers. Now, it gets complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. One like this, I use monofilament fishing line. I've used braided line. It doesn't matter, pound test, whatever. I'm a fisherman. So I always have fishing line, and I never throw a spool away because it will always work for my trap and stuff. This thing's several years old, and I've got years. I'll never use rest of my life, most likely, unless I live to be a couple 100 years old. So the feather deal, hanging from a string. The one I had out there a while ago was pretty typical what I do. I'm going to get all tangled up here. And those things, boy, they get tangled up. They make a mess. What I generally do is I run a piece of fishing line from a limb, overhanging limb, whether I put it up myself or something already hanging there. I put a swivel on it because I want it to spin. I don't want it to get all tangled up. And some spin worse than others. Then this particular one, I've got 3 chicken feathers, well, they're all chicken feathers, and a piece of dyed marabou, like for tying crappie jigs. With a sinker, a slip sinker, just weight on the end so it doesn't blow up in the limbs. I want, if it's not going to be working for you, if you can't keep it working, it's just like a set freezing in. If you cannot keep that thing working, what's the point? So I like to put a little bit of weight. I've tied a stick on the end, something. I have actually ran it to the ground and tied it to something because it's still going to move around. I want that thing working. If it gets wrapped up in a limb overhead, it's not working. Pretty simple, right? The red thing is something I've been experimenting with for several years. And guys, all I can say for sure is bobcats eat it up, but they also eat up the ones that don't have red. Okay? I like a contrast, which reminds me of something. Let me grab that real quick. That reminded me that over the years I have caught a load of bobcats with one of these, a white-tailed deer tail. And I believe, I tied the end of it, hang it from a swivel, it'll sit there and spin a little bit. I believe it's the contrast that works, the dark and light. So on many of my sets, I'll put a light-colored feather and a dark-colored feather. I believe that's kind of the key to visibility. Okay? So feathers work, and also feathers on the ground. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But hanging feathers are key for bobcats, gray fox, and those big raccoons. It just gets their attention. Those are animals that like to get their attention caught, okay? Mixing colors up doesn't hurt. It's fun to experiment. I just, every time I catch one on that red feather, I think, yeah, I've done something, and the next 2 will be on solid white or whatever. So don't get too shook up about it. The other main attractor that I use are the bones, cow bones, T-bones like this one. For bobcats, gray fox, I just put them in the ground deep enough they stay standing up. I want that thing to have a profile. Okay, I want it to show. I've caught them on this bone also, and on the coyotes, I've hammered it in the ground just like that. And the cool thing about these T-bones, this is an old school trick. If you see that one's got some sheep's wool in the hole. See that? That's still from last year. That sheep's wool will have lure on it. Okay? And it gets it right there, and rain makes it dribble down, keeps it working, but it stays working. And of course, you'll see animals will pull it out sometimes, especially gray fox. Let you know there's animals in the area, maybe you're oversetting them. The bones are excellent. I would go nowhere trapping without that. Look at that. I keep them on hand all the time. That thing's got feathers in it. It's got all kinds of stuff. Got my scissors. Keep my fishing line in there. But yeah, T-bones and bones are just across the board just about as good as the feathers for catching critters. Okay, so what are we trying to do with the attractors? Well, obviously we're trying to attract fur-bearers to our sets. You cannot beat setting on location. You cannot beat setting on sign. You cannot beat setting where the animals go anyway. That's the biggest trick to trapping, is putting that pan that big underneath an animal's foot and thousands of acres to do it in. That's the ultimate art of trapping. That's where experience comes into play. However, you can't always be spot on, especially with the cats, gray fox, whatever. Say you go into an area that you like, it looks pretty good, but you've never trapped before, especially cat sign is so hard to find. So you got to set several sets in an area. The trick is this. I won't cluster my sets for cats like I do for coyotes all in one spot. I'll spread them out 50, 60, 100 yards apart. But then I'll put these feathers up with the thinking that if a cat comes through, he may look over there and see that feather from 100 yards away and get his attention to come closer. Okay? That's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to catch that animal that is a little bit off the beaten path or off where I thought he'd be, which is going to be a lot because I don't get it right any more than anybody else probably. I've learned a lot over the years, but I still think cats are so unpredictable. It's just They just do their own thing. Cats have personalities like no other animal. So our premise is we're going to catch the animal's attention from a distance away. We're going to call him to our set. And that's where it gets complicated. I'm not out there. My hands are freezing right now. I'm not out there setting, which I ought to be. But I think I can explain this good enough right now. So we want to get him close to set. How close to the set do you put all this crap? Well, these feathers, I'm going to hang these feathers within a few feet of the set. Okay? But not... there was a video years ago where a guy puts it right over the pan, thinking the animal will jump on it and land in the pan. That's just asinine ridiculous. The set that I make for 90+% of my cats is a semi-cubby set. It's not a pure cubby. It's my own deal. I just want him to get close enough that he looks over and sees the rest of the mess that I've got, which include some sort of limb, cedar, and then bones and feathers placed in the ground and poked in the ground all around it. And then I get him there looking overhead at this, and then he catches attention. I draw him in with lure, possibly bait. I'm not a big bait guy, but possibly. Some turned up dirt, some bones, some feathers, and get him to go across my trap to get in there. That's the idea. The attractor is going to get him close, and the stuff at the set will make him get close enough, hopefully. That makes sense? It's been a long time since I made a bobcat set without using either a big dirt hole or a T-bone, or both. A lot of disruption, a lot of stuff happening. So I use lots of different kinds of feathers. We're in turkey barn and chicken barn territory around here, plus we have our own chickens. There's a turkey feather. I like a couple big feathers from time to time. I've got bags of these feathers. I pick feathers up all year long. They're laying in the driveway, chicken shed. These contrast feathers are pretty cool. And then when a chicken dies or we butcher a chicken, look at this. I can make a mess real quick. I've got bags of these. Different colors, different shapes, different sizes. Feathers galore. Isn't that a mess? Look at that. And I'm going to make a bigger mess if I keep pulling them out. I'm looking for unsettled, subtle. I want these things doing their job. Here's one thing I do. I get my set made. I got him coming in with the feather hanging overhead. And I'm going to take these. I'm going to put in front of the bone, up against the bone. I'm going to poke them in the ground. I really like to take a feather. It's almost I'm dropping feathers all over the floor. My hands are froze. Take this feather right here. If you poke that in the ground near your set, I'm talking behind the trap, it's going to sit there and flutter in the wind. And them cats cannot stand it. It's going to flutter like that. And I think that's real important to have a few of them sitting like that, where the air can get a hold of them, besides the tractor, because we got to keep his attention. And that's the biggest trick to cats, keeping their attention. You get it ain't easy, but cats are freaking ignorant about going squirrel and going somewhere else. So a lot of stuff happening at the set. I like poking them in the ground, I scatter them on the ground. I do not use a bushel of feathers at a set. 4 or 5 feathers back there near your lures, and I put lures. I've used as many as 4 lures at a set before. I have done this one I do once in a while, and I don't know why I don't do it more often. Here's one. My hands are so froze I can't feel what I'm doing. I got a red feather hanging there, and I've got a piece of fur, tan fur. Sheep's wool will work too. Put some urine on that. Boy, it blows around and it spreads that scent out further than a stationary lure does. And I do that once in a while and it works so well, I can't believe I don't do it every time. I'm not really sure why, except I'm not very smart. Maybe I'm a little ignorant. Because if you put a fixed lure or 3 or 4 in one spot, they have that zone that they cover it that spreads out that certain angle. But you put one that moves, that covers an extra 100 yards downwind possibly. So that's just something I think works pretty well. I've done a lot of good, but I used to keep all records all the time. It worked really well. I need to do it more often. So you get yourself some fishing line, something to cut it with. You won't bite it with your teeth. Trust me, there's a lot of years of that has just ruined me. Get some feathers and get some sort of weight below the feather or above. I like it below. Above makes dance a little more, but you got more chance of blowing up into a tree. Hang near your set, very near, a couple foot to most, but near the set. And I try to do it to where the animal comes into that. When he looks up at that, he has to be looking into my set. That's the key. So it's directly in front of my semi-cubbies, dirt holes, whatever. Not over the set, a couple foot away. But when he sees that, he's looking. He has to look over and see my other attractors, and that's the idea. Okay, the bones are the same deal. You got to think about being downwind, critters coming in, 45 degrees from downwind. They may circle a set. That bone is going to be the final thing that makes them commit. And I use the bones right at my dirt holes, double dirt holes, in place of a dirt hole. And I put my lure and pee, it's unbelievable scent post. Hammer one in the ground and just spray pee on it, or a little bit of, like cold like this, I have some good skunky stuff on it too. So it's a real natural looking piece, except for coyotes. They know that bone wasn't there the day before. Coyotes are freaks. You got to play the coyotes out a little bit. Bottom line, these animals are all different, y'all. They all react different, and even amongst each other, they have personalities. They do things different. Feathers and bones. Feathers and bones. Anything that's bright and different, knowing that you're going to blow a coyote off once in a while, but you're going to call more bobcat and gray fox and big raccoon in. Biggest bobcat I ever caught was about 31 pounds. And he was scrawny. He should have been bigger. He had a blind in one eye. He was probably half blind in the other. But anyway, I caught him on a big old broken piece of chert rock. It slashed off broken. I pulled that thing out of the ground, and it was so shiny, I put a set in front of it, and that's what, and I put lure and urine on it, and it stuck out like a sore thumb. It hadn't been there before. I caught that biggest bobcat of my life on that big old nodule piece of chert. Using things to your advantage, and that cat had no chance, 31 pounds, and he come in like a big boy, and that's using things to your favor. Like so many of my videos, from fishing or whatever, I say keep it simple. And I try to do that in this video, but I guess it wouldn't do a video like this much justice if we didn't talk about other things to use for attractors. A lot of people use CDs. I'm not a big fan of the CD. It works. I don't no doubt in my mind that it works. I just never had much luck with one, but that's something to think about. All flashing, tied up where it can spin and turn a little bit. An interesting thing you might try, any piece of fur or a small stuffed animal with big eyes. And bobcats are fascinated by those big owl-looking eyes. You can get them at Hobby Lobby. You can get them at Walmart, I'm sure, in the craft section. Or the stuffed animal that comes with those big eyes. I've done that just enough. I need to experiment with that some more, but it does work. Coyotes. Again, I'm not big on side attraction for coyotes, but a piece of burnt up wood, charcoal wood, is a killer for every animal, especially red fox and coyotes. Not a big piece, but black, especially like in the snow out here, that black will show up out in the edge of a field, and it holds lure and urine tremendously well. Excellent, excellent. I hardly ever go into a season without a few pieces of charred wood on hand. It's just really that good. I've heard a guy using flagging tape. I tried it a couple times. I tried some magnetic tape. It's all flashy. It didn't work for me. I don't know if I did something wrong. I tried that one whole season. It didn't seem to work very well for me. I said there are other alternatives, other things you can use. I caught a bobcat once, and I did it one time. Maybe I need to do it again. One of those kids' pinwheels that you buy at the store where they spin on a plastic straw. It's a shiny. It was like blue and red and silver, and it spun. Caught a bobcat doing that once. It's not rocket science, y'all. Something flashy catches cat's attention. Not so flashy catches coyote's attention. Something stands out. If you incorporate it in your set where it holds lure and bait or some sort of scent, that's also a big plus. Your favor. I'm freezing to death, y'all. It is too cold out here for this southern boy. And I'm not trapping. I'm ashamed of that to a degree. I got traps to work on. I never in my life. But I'm going to be trapping. I'm going to get some done. Hope this helps y'all. If you like what I'm doing, subscribe, please. Thank you. I can't think of anything else except I'm going to get my hands warmed up. God bless y'all. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Talk at you later.